So again, we're not asking anybody to come to work ill. If you are ill, we really want you to stay home and take care of yourself. Do not come to campus. We will have a link available on the website that has the updated list of symptoms, because as we all know, as new variants come on, sometimes the symptoms list changes a little bit, but we will have that list available for everybody so that you would be able to check the symptoms that you're having against that list. And that's the first one. It's pretty simple.
So the second one is basically completing a COVID-19 test. And if you're experiencing symptoms and you want to go ahead and get tested, so we ask you to remain off campus while you're waiting results. And then, of course, we always want to make sure that you understand that tests are available through your healthcare provider, also local pharmacies. We do still have some available through the campus. And of course, you can always get them through Test Iowa. We do encourage you to go ahead and order them using kind of the free at-home testing kits through the Postal Service, especially, knowing that having those tests ahead of time is going to make it easier for you if you decide to test if you're not feeling well. I know one of our other faculty shared that if you have the insurance through us, that there is the ability to get tests for free through our insurance as well. But we'll have those links available to you and to students so that if you're looking to get those tests, you'll have those resources available.
So next, you're going to confirm your need to isolate or quarantine. And so our recommendations include going out to the CDC quarantine or isolation calculator. We'll come to that in a second, or use your healthcare provider. Eastern Iowa is not in the healthcare business. And so we're not going to supersede your healthcare provider, doctor, or the CDC recommendations. So currently, the CDC calculator is not functioning as of late last week when they changed regulations. It's actually a really slick tool where you put in your date, you're first experiencing symptoms or had an exposure, walk through your vaccination status, and then it would give you a return date based on their current recommendations. It's not up. We're hoping that it's up later this week. It still indicates that it's being updated and will be posted when available. When you go to that site, it will walk you through all the steps, where we can switch and go out there now. And so it's going to walk you through very simply how to determine when you would come back to campus or your students would come back to campus. And so it tells you whether you're having symptoms and would have been exposed. Essentially, if you are either testing positive or have symptoms, it's basically a 5-day isolation period. If you're not having symptoms, even with an exposure, you're not required to isolate or quarantine anymore based on current guidelines. They do strongly encourage mask wearing if you've been exposed. And so although the campuses are not going to be requiring masks, we would encourage, faculty and staff and students to wear a mask if you've had a COVID exposure, even if you're testing negative.
So okay.
So again, you're going to follow those instructions regarding your need to isolate off campus, or your students need to isolate off campus. And again, we recommend that even if you've communicated a date, that if your symptoms haven't improved, that you would continue to stay off campus, or your students would continue to stay off campus. So even if it was originally supposed to be 5 days, if you're experiencing symptoms or your healthcare provider obviously has encouraged you to stay off campus, that's what we want you to do. Don, is Ann able to join us?
Not
Okay.
so far. We're still working on it.
Do you want to cover this?
Can we let's do it together? So
Okay.
I'm going to put you down. So the fourth one is to talk about kind of communicating your absence. And so we're going to walk through it as in kind of the student perspective, and then also as staff, faculty and staff. And so with students, it's, let your instructors know that you're sick or you have an appointment, and then we're encouraging them to keep their instructors informed when they're absent due to illness, and that as faculty and staff, you'll should expect you will continue to face challenges and offer flexibility when available. And then for students that they should contact their instructors when a need to miss a class or deadline arises. And a makeup policy is included in your course syllabus. We're also letting them know that instructors may request appropriate documentation regarding their absence. If we're also, this is one of the other things we're encouraging is if they're ill for an extended period of time, we're asking them to contact their instructors and advisors so they can explore best options for completing the courses.
Best options might include withdrawing. It might also include using our medical leave policy if they're going to miss so much class that it'd be impossible for them to make up the work. The key difference this fall is that they will not be contacting HR. HR will, and the Deans and Students Office will not be contacting you as instructors. The students will be treating it just like they would any other illness, and it would fall underneath your makeup policy. We're also not requiring instructors to flip classrooms and offer Zoom options when you have students sick. Certainly something you could do for a student, but it's certainly not a requirement at this time. And the last bullet is just about if they have appointments on campus to notify those offices as well. A lot of appointments are available via Zoom, such as advising, some tutoring, things like that. So if they're contacting you and they mention missing appointments, certainly have them contact those offices. If they're well enough, they could do some of those appointments via Zoom. Otherwise, they'll get rescheduled when they're able to come back to campus.
Okay, so for staff, faculty, and student employees, what we're asking you to do is to communicate with your supervisor. And of course, we all want everyone to practice good communication strategies. And we're asking that you communicate with your supervisor and confirm a return to work date. So you've called in sick, you've taken the opportunity to kind of work through how you want to approach it using the CDC calculator or using your healthcare provider, and then communicating with your supervisor to let us know when you'll be returning to work. Again, what you'll expect then after that is a confirmation from your supervisor. And it says, so before your first day of absence is over, so when you're not well and not coming in, you should expect to hear from your supervisor through email, kind of confirming the receipt of your need to isolate or quarantine and your confirm to work date. This is going to match either the healthcare provider release or the CDC guidance that you provide. Please note, return to work date may change based on continued symptoms or if you receive a positive test result. We all know that the different variants could have different symptoms and could last a little bit longer depending on who you are. Everybody is a little bit different if they actually do have COVID. So,
especially this summer, we've seen a lot of staff that have experienced symptoms, have stayed off campus, have tested negative the first couple of days, and then maybe day 3 or 4 they've tested positive. So we can certainly continue to consider testing throughout, like especially if you're experiencing any COVID related symptoms.
So for flexible work options, if you're a staff member, if your illness requires you to isolate or quarantine, we want you to work with your supervisor to see if working remote is permissible given the situation. Same thing with instructors. If your situation requires you to isolate or quarantine, work with your supervisor to determine if teaching remote is permissible or if a substitute teacher should be considered. And the biggest piece here is just, make sure that you're communicating and working with your supervisor so that we know when you can return to work and then be able to work with you if it winds up being extended. And of course, always remember that supervisor approval is required for remote work. It's kind of a reminder when it comes to leave. If you're unable to work remotely, you'll need to use your leave sheets. Upon your return, employees should complete your green sheet for sick leave, and kind of reminder for sick leave is one day is 8 hours of sick leave regardless of your teaching schedule that day. Some of the things we recommend is to make sure that you're utilizing self-service to track your leave usage and availability. And then of course, adjunct instructors do not need to complete leave forms. And I'm going to flip seats with Anne so she can sit.
All righty, hello everyone. I was blocked from Zoom for whatever reason, so sorry about my delay. I'm Ann Muller, I'm the president at Scott. I missed the introductions. And Dawn, did you just finish the last bit? So we're ready for the next one?
Oh no, if you have
the last bullet.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, so we're talking about communicating your absence. So if you have any concerns about the appropriate use of leave, this is the time when HR is going to finally get involved. So you could contact HR, and if the amount of leave needed exceeds 3 days, you definitely want to check with HR because you may be eligible to apply for FMLA. We all know people who've had to be out for many days, those long COVID individuals. So do contact HR to discuss those options if those are needed. And then communicate your absence, right? Okay, sorry everyone, stepping in and not knowing where people were. Okay, so this category, still under communicate your absence. This is for staff, faculty, and student employees. This is notification to students and any appointments you might have. So any of our employees, if applicable, you want to send your appointments an email with any additional information that they might need. And so that's going to be, if you had some sort of appointment to talk about a new program, if you had appointments for, say, someone was coming in to talk to you in your office, maybe needing some tutoring or to discuss something with you, you want to make sure that you know to let them know that you can't make that. In particular, so you got to keep in mind that a lot of this written word, the part that you're seeing right now, this is for all of those categories. And then we have this subcategory that's particular for instructors. For instructors, you're going to need to report your absence to your supervisor per your campus protocol, so your absence can be posted on EICC Connect. And I understand that Muscatine, Clinton, and Scott, we all do it differently. So you'll want to talk with, if you're at Muscatine, make sure you know what Jeremy Pickard expects. If you're at Clinton, make sure you know what Amy Madsen-Smith expects. When you're at Scott, it's going to be the instructional team, and I believe we use an email address system for that. So, and they've probably talked through that with you. But if not, ask those questions. And then secondly, you want to use Canvas to post an announcement and send your students an email with any additional information that they might need. And if you were here last year, I'm sure that you did a lot of that. And I believe I'm at the end with questions. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. The one thing we didn't touch on. The one thing we didn't touch on is family. In the past, we've had to quarantine off campus if you were exposed to like an immediate family member. You had a spouse or a child or immediate, somebody in your household was sick. Because the CDC does not require quarantining, you would not need to quarantine off campus unless you're experiencing symptoms or has tested positive yourself. It does potentially change what leave you can use because you would not be the sick individual. So you could use family sick leave or one of your personal days or something like that. If you're sick, along with your family member, that's obviously a different situation and it would follow these protocols.
So, overall, and I just mentioned this at the welcome back for the Scott meeting, and I'm sure at each campus, you probably heard this same thing. We're 2.5 years into this, so we do know what COVID is. And so we just want to encourage everyone to remember that if you're not feeling well, right, you're staying home. And we want you to stay home. We want you to get rested. If you suspect it's COVID for whatever reason, then we want you to go through these 4 C's. At this point, we want to figure out how to kind of live with COVID and work with COVID. So certainly have conversations with your supervisor. This should hopefully, and I'm sure that the team mentioned this is an opportunity for us to work with our supervisors instead of with HR. And that's not trying to exclude HR in any way whatsoever, but it's like treating it like any other illness that you have. You typically go through your supervisor to say that you're absent. So again, really encouraging you to stay home if you're not feeling well. Take care of yourself. And then we'll figure out how to manage that if you need to stay out longer. Did you guys take them to the COVID calculator? Okay, still not working. But if you're following your literature, Definitely it is, usually it's like 5 days out if you are COVID positive, and then after that you're masking, and I'm sure they mentioned that as well.
Tomorrow, we will be
consider it-
sending information out to students. We're kind of intentionally waiting, hoping that that COVID calculator comes back. If not, there will be slight revisions to the language that's on the website, just to reflect using the CDC guidance rather than the calculator itself. So we're hopeful the calculator comes back, just because it was a really slick tool and pretty simple for everybody to use. But if not, we'll be referencing that page and those guidelines.